I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window in my downtown apartment, the soft hum of the city below mixing with the faint aroma of my morning coffee. My silk blouse felt smooth against my skin, a small luxury I allowed myself before diving into the chaos of emails and calls. On the surface, everything looked perfect. I had built a life that many would envy. My own apartment, a flourishing consulting business, and the quiet pride of independence. But there were truths I kept buried, small secrets that made my victories taste sweeter. And then my phone buzzed. A text from my sister, Maddie, popped up on the screen. "We need to talk about the rent. You're behind again." My chest tightened. Behind? She had evicted me once over $2,000, acting as if I owed her the world. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had quietly cleared a $780,000 mortgage for her years ago when she was drowning in debt. I stared out at the skyline, feeling a swirl of hurt, pride, and irony. How had it come to this? The sister I had helped, the sister I had believed in, was now threatening me over a sum that was trivial in the grand scheme of what I had already done. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Should I answer? Or let her words hang in the air like a challenge I was ready to meet on my own terms? The city lights flickered as dusk settled, and I realized the past was about to collide with the present, whether I liked it or not. I can still remember that night like it was yesterday, even though years have passed. I was 24, fresh out of college, and living in a cramped apartment that barely fit my dreams. Maddie had stormed in, her heels clicking aggressively against the hardwood floor, her eyes blazing with frustration. "You owe me rent again, Hannah. I can't keep covering for you," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to make my heart pound. I felt my hands shake, gripping the edge of the sofa, as if it could anchor me against the storm of words. "I've told you, Maddie, I'm doing my best." I tried to keep my voice calm, but the lump in my throat made it tremble. "You know I'm working on something big, something that will." "That doesn't matter," she cut me off. $2,000 is $2,000. Either you pay or you're out. And just like that, my world narrowed. The apartment that had felt like home moments ago suddenly turned into a courtroom where I was judged guilty before the trial had even begun. I felt the sting of betrayal, the sharp edge of disbelief. Maddie wasn't just my sister in that moment. She was my enemy, and the home I had known as safe was ripped away. I remember clutching the small necklace my grandmother had given me before she passed, a tiny gold charm shaped like a key. "This is a reminder," she had said, "that doors will always open for those who dare to walk through them." I held that charm tight that night, letting her words sink into my chest as tears blurred my vision. It was the first time I truly decided I couldn't rely on anyone else. I would stand on my own, even if it meant leaving behind everything familiar, even family. I packed a single bag, leaving the eviction notice and Maddie's fury behind, and stepped into the night, feeling the fear and freedom coil together in my stomach. That night marked the beginning of my journey. I didn't know exactly how I would survive, but I knew I would. And somewhere deep down, a small, stubborn voice whispered that one day I would return, not as the sister who had been thrown out, but as someone she could never ignore. I still remember the first night I sat alone in my tiny studio apartment, the city lights spilling through the blinds, painting stripes across the floor. My bag was unpacked, but my life was anything but. I had no safety net, no family support, just a handful of savings and the determination burning in my chest. The gold key from my grandmother rested around my neck, a silent reminder that doors would open for those brave enough to step through them. I started small. Freelance consulting projects, late-night spreadsheets, endless calls with potential clients who didn't yet see my value. Some days I cried in the bathroom after rejection emails piled up, the sting of self-doubt threatening to swallow me whole. Other days I forced myself to smile, to dress up even when I had nowhere to go, telling myself that confidence was contagious, even if no one else noticed. And then came Marcus, a seasoned entrepreneur who had seen potential in me before I even saw it in myself. "Hannah, you're too talented to hide," he said one evening over a cup of lukewarm coffee. "You're going to build something that even your sister won't be able to ignore." His belief lit a spark I hadn't realized had dimmed under years of family tension and financial strain. Months turned into years. I learned to pitch, to negotiate, to fight stereotypes that doubted my ability because I was young, because I was a woman, because I had a messy past. My first real win, a client who trusted me despite my lack of experience, felt like standing at the peak of a mountain I hadn't even known existed. Every victory after that, no matter how small, was a brick in the foundation of a life I was building entirely on my own terms. And yet, I never let anyone, especially Maddie, see the full picture. Social media updates were modest. Family calls were brief. I let them assume I was still struggling, still at their mercy. There was satisfaction in keeping my triumphs hidden, a quiet power in knowing the truth while they remained blind. By the time I finally moved into a modern downtown apartment with my name on the lease, my consulting business had grown into a thriving company. I had saved diligently, invested wisely, and quietly taken care of financial obligations that had weighed heavily on Maddie's life. Most notably, the mortgage that once loomed over her like an unshakable shadow. Every evening, when I placed my coffee cup on the glass table in my living room, I would look at the city skyline and smile. I had built a life I loved, a life that was mine in every sense, and yet I carried with me the memory of that tiny apartment, the eviction notice, and the fiery determination that had propelled me from that fragile, hurt young woman to the force I had become. The knock at my apartment door was sharp, deliberate, like Maddie's footsteps had always been, a mix of confidence and impatience. I had been expecting her, but the reality of seeing her again after all these years still sent a shiver through me. I opened the door to find her standing there, arms crossed, her posture radiating authority, as if she had somehow assumed I would still be the same struggling sister she had once thrown out. Behind her, a couple of her friends lingered, their curious eyes darting around my living room, taking in the space that spoke of elegance and subtle luxury, floor-to-ceiling shelves lined with art books, a sculpture I had collected on a trip to Chicago, and a muted gold desk that reflected the soft glow of the chandelier above. "Hello, Maddie," I said calmly, my voice even but firm. "I wasn't sure you'd come." She blinked, scanning the room. "Hannah, wow. This is nice." Her words were awkward, unsure, her eyes betraying a mixture of envy and disbelief. I gestured for her to sit. "Please, make yourself comfortable." As she sank into the leather chair, I let the silence stretch, letting her take in the contrast between the struggling woman she had expected and the life I had quietly built. Her mouth opened, closed, and opened again, searching for words that wouldn't come. Then I leaned forward, letting my hands rest lightly on the edge of the desk. "Maddie, do you remember the eviction years ago? The apartment, the rent, the fights?" Her lips pressed together, guilt flickering in her eyes. Yes, I remember." I took a deep breath and let the words fall, slow and deliberate. "What you don't know is that I've spent the last several years building a life where I am fully independent. I've invested, worked, and yes, I've quietly taken care of the mortgage on your home. $780,000. Paid in full. You've never had to worry about it." For a moment, she froze, her body stiff, eyes wide. The friends behind her gasped softly. Maddie's hand trembled as she reached for her phone, probably to call someone for advice, but she didn't speak. "I didn't tell you because I wanted you to see that your past actions, your choices, wouldn't define me," I continued. "I am not the same girl you threw out over $2,000. I am someone who can choose when to forgive, when to help, and when to let go. But today, I'm choosing to show you the truth." Her voice cracked, barely audible. You did all that? For me?" I nodded. "Yes. And now you know that the power to rise, to change your life, has always been within you too. I've simply taken my steps first." The room was heavy with tension, pride, guilt, disbelief, and awe mingling in the silence. Maddie's friends were staring, realizing this was no small victory. It was a complete reversal of roles. The sister who had once been at the mercy of another was now the one holding the upper hand, offering lessons wrapped in compassion and strength. I could see the spark of understanding flicker in Maddie's eyes, the recognition of the woman I had become. And in that moment, the past finally met the present, not as a confrontation of anger, but as a revelation of everything I had silently accomplished. The weight of the moment settled over the room like a slow, deliberate tide. Maddie had always assumed I was powerless, but now the dynamic had completely shifted. I could see the realization dawn in her eyes, the uncomfortable truth that she could no longer control or judge me, and that her past actions had consequences that she had never fully understood. I've thought a lot about how I want to handle this. I began, my voice steady. I could walk away entirely, but I won't. I care about you, Maddie, and I care about our family. But things cannot go back to the way they were. There have to be boundaries. Conditions. Her lips parted, a mixture of relief and apprehension flickering across her face. First, I continued, you need to let go of resentment. Holding on to anger doesn't fix anything. It only keeps you trapped in the past. You need to forgive yourself and me for everything that happened. Maddie's eyes welled up, but I didn't let her interrupt. Second, financial responsibility is non-negotiable. You will manage your money carefully, make plans, and take accountability. I've given you a clean slate, but it comes with the expectation that you will never again rely on someone else to rescue you at your expense. Her nod was slow, almost reverent. Third, I said, leaning forward slightly, you need to pursue your own growth. Whether that's in your career, your education, or personal passions, you need to stop living in comparison and start building a life that's truly yours. I paused, letting each point sink in. And finally, respect the boundaries we set. That includes how we communicate, how we spend time together, and understanding that I am no longer the girl you could push around. I'm your sister, yes, but I am also my own person, and my life, my decisions, and my achievements are mine to protect. Maddie swallowed, her voice barely audible. I understand. I really do. I smiled softly, letting warmth and firmness coexist in my tone. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to help you step into the person I know you can become. But you have to meet me halfway. Compassion without change isn't enough. Her friends watched quietly, the room heavy with the weight of transformation. It wasn't a lecture, and it wasn't revenge. It was empowerment. I had the power now, but I chose to wield it in a way that demanded growth rather than fear. As I looked at Maddie, I realized something profound. The sister who had once evicted me over $2,000 was now learning a lesson worth far more. Not just about money or power, but about love, responsibility, and the strength that comes from truly standing on your own. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of equilibrium, a shift in the energy between us. I wasn't just the woman who had quietly paid off her mortgage. I was the sister who would guide her toward a better version of herself, but only if she was ready to accept it. Months passed after that conversation, and slowly, subtly, I began to see the changes take root. Maddie wasn't perfect, and she still stumbled sometimes, but she was trying. She started managing her finances responsibly, enrolled in courses she had always dreamed of taking, and even reached out to me for advice without the usual defensiveness. Our conversations became genuine, stripped of past resentments, filled instead with curiosity and care. It was strange and beautiful to watch her grow. The sister who had once thrown me out over $2,000 was now learning lessons worth far more, lessons in humility, accountability, and the quiet power of self-respect. And as she changed, I found myself reflecting on my own journey with a new clarity. I remembered the tiny gold key my grandmother had given me, the symbol of doors waiting to open. That charm, once a comforting talisman, had guided me through nights of fear, through years of struggle, and into a life I had built from scratch. I traced it with my fingers, smiling, realizing how far I had come from the terrified girl clutching it in a cramped apartment, unsure if she would survive another week. Looking out at the city skyline from my apartment now, I felt a deep sense of closure. The pain I had endured, the betrayals, the sleepless nights, they had all shaped me into someone stronger, someone capable of compassion without surrendering her boundaries. I had transformed hurt into power, struggle into opportunity, and secrecy into a revelation that changed lives, not by force, but by design. And as Maddie and I sat together one evening, sipping coffee and sharing laughter that once felt impossible, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about money, or about a mortgage, or even about revenge. It was about understanding my worth, asserting it with grace, and offering love on my terms. I leaned back, feeling the soft leather of my chair, and let a quiet, confident smile spread across my face. I whispered to myself, a truth I had carried silently for years. I am the author of my life. I choose strength, I choose grace, and I choose freedom, always on my own terms. And with that, the past finally settled into its rightful place, not as a weight or a wound, but as the foundation of the woman I had become.